So hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar about the online CELTA experience. My name is Alberto Costa and I will be your webinar host. I work for Cambridge Assessment English in the Americas as a Senior Assessment Services Manager. I'm based in São Paulo in Brazil, where I am speaking from. With me today is a group of speakers who will talk to us about the online CELTA experience. In order of appearance during the webinar, we will listen to Tim Banks and Piri Szabo. They are both from Cambridge Assessment English. We will also listen to Henrique Moura, Jeff Promonco, Orlando Delgado, and Wilson Portillo, CELTA tutors from centers across the Americas, who will share their views on delivering the CELTA course fully online. We will also hear about the online CELTA experience from the perspective of two CELTA candidates, Laken Hurd and Thais Braga. Once again, welcome to today's webinar about the online CELTA experience. So our agenda will be as follows. We will have Tim Banks, who will be talking to us about giving teachers the confidence to go further. Next, Piri Szabo will talk to us about the 100% online CELTA, a unique opportunity. We will also hear live testimonials from CELTA tutors across the Americas. We will also hear video testimonials from two CELTA students from the Americas, and there will be a moment for questions and answers at the end. So, without further ado, please welcome our Global Manager for Teacher Development, Tim Banks, who's based in Cambridge, but is speaking from Prague today. Tim, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you, Alberto. So it's good to see so many people interested in learning about CELTA, and particularly the online opportunity for CELTA at the moment. And I'm going to tell you a little about the background to CELTA and particularly about what we're doing at the moment. And as Alberto said, you can ask questions. We'll try to answer some from the text box, but there'll be opportunity to ask questions at the end of the webinar as well. So Cambridge English Teaching covers a range of things: the qualifications such as CELTA, Delta, and the Teaching Knowledge Test, which is mainly what I'm going to talk about here, CELTA particularly. Development, which is the resources that we provide for all teachers to help them to improve their skills in teaching, and support for teachers who are preparing candidates for our exams. But today we're talking primarily about CELTA. Our qualifications and our professional development is all about giving you, the teachers, the confidence to go further, to help your learners to build their skills, to build the teachers' skills and confidence so that they can help their learners to develop their standard of English. And all of our qualifications are mapped to our teaching framework. So you can see here the summary level of the framework. If you go on the Cambridge English website, you'll find a much more detailed version than this, and it can help you plan your development to look at where you are in your skill development at the moment and where you want to get to and how you can get there. So CELTA, what is it? It's the Certificate in Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages. There are many reasons why people choose to take a CELTA course. They may take it because they want to develop their skills, particularly in teaching in a communicative way. They may take it because they need a qualification for some reason. And they often take it because it's very useful for gaining employment. So it will help you to get a job, to improve your job prospects. As the quote says from a CELTA graduate here, it changed my job prospects overnight. So it's very important for many CELTA graduates. And one of the main reasons, as I say, is because employers ask for CELTA. We did a bit of research into international adverts for English teachers, and it showed these things. So 70% of international adverts for English teachers asked for CELTA specifically by name. And within the United Kingdom, that was 90% of adverts that asked for CELTA by name, and even within the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, 72% of adverts were asking for CELTA. So clearly you can see that it's valued by employers, and that's one of the main reasons why it's so valuable for teachers as well. How can you take CELTA? Well, in the normal way, in normal times, there are three really main ways that you can take a CELTA course. The full-time face-to-face course, which is usually over 4 weeks, sometimes 5 weeks. A part-time face-to-face course, which could be over 10 or 12 weeks, or it could be over longer. And a part-time blend of online and face-to-face, which is usually, again, over 12 weeks or more, up to 9 months in some cases. So there are already a number of options for how you can take CELTA, and you can contact your chosen CELTA centre to find out more about which options they offer and how they run. But of course, in current times, that is not always practical with the coronavirus. So we'll talk in a moment about how things have changed. But regardless of any changes, the content of a CELTA course is still the same thing. So it's a minimum of 120 hours of tutored study, so study which is supervised, delivered by a tutor or supervised by a tutor, and a recommended 80 hours of supported self-study, so where you're doing work on your own, preparing lessons, reading about teaching, writing, preparing lessons, writing assignments, that kind of thing. And it covers the principles of effective teaching. So that's at the heart of CELTA, is about effective teaching and giving you the practical teaching techniques you need to go into the classroom, and also to give you the experience of teaching with real English learners. So all of the teaching practice that you do is with real learners in a classroom. The particular opportunity at the moment is because of the COVID-19 situation. Obviously, a lot of our centres aren't able to run face-to-face courses around the world. So many centres have taken the opportunity that we've agreed to offer 100% online courses, and these can be both part-time and full-time, so usually still over around 4 or 5 weeks, but part-time courses can be over the usual time frame. The content is exactly the same. The only differences are that the training and the support are delivered online by the same trainers, so the same authorized trainers who would be delivering a face-to-face course, but in this case, they're delivering all of that training online. Your observation of experienced teachers is another part of CELTA, so you watch some experienced teachers delivering lessons to see how they do it and learn from their experience. And that is also online. And crucially, the teaching practice itself is with groups of learners in online learning courses, so in an online learning environment. So you might be using a platform like Zoom, where you have 10, 12 learners learning English, and you as the trainee on the CELTA course are teaching them. So it's very similar to what you would do in the classroom. The teaching skills are essentially the same. It's just a slightly different mode of delivering the course and the teaching practice. CELTA is available internationally, as Alberto said at the beginning. There's a range of CELTA centres in most of the countries in the region. There are more than that, in fact, that it says there, over 1,000 courses every year in more than 80 countries. So it's internationally used, internationally recognised around the world. Who can take CELTA? So what do you need to be able to join a CELTA course? The minimum requirements are that you have to be 18 years old or over. You have to have a standard of education equivalent to that required for entry into higher education. So the kind of level of education that would allow you to that would qualify you to go to a university or college. And your English level needs to be at a high C1 level or C2. So you need a very high level of English proficiency. Centres, of course, you apply to your centre and they'll have an application task. They'll give you information, but they'll also have tasks that they give you as part of the application, and then they'll do an interview with you to assess your readiness to take a CELTA course. So whatever format of CELTA you choose, whether it's now fully online or if you wait until it's possible to do a face-to-face course, whether you do it full-time or part-time, you'll be studying essentially the same teaching skills. So the principles of effective teaching, a range of practical skills, and hands-on teaching practice with real English learners. There are 5 key topics which are covered in the syllabus for CELTA. So about learners and teachers, the learning context, about how people learn languages, that kind of thing, how you teach language. Analysis of language and language awareness, so understanding how the language works and how you can teach that. The 4 skills, reading, listening, speaking and writing, how they work, how they are assessed and how you can teach them. Planning and resources for different teaching contexts, and developing teaching skills and professionalism. And again, it's the same whatever format of the course you take. How are you assessed when you take a CELTA course? Well, there's no written exam. Assessment is throughout the course, so it's continuous assessment throughout the course. And it's based on 2 main things. One is the trainers watching you as you're doing teaching practice, as you're teaching learners, and assessing your skills as you go through that. And in total, you do 6 hours of teaching practice during the course. That's usually broken into 8 or 9 actual lessons. And you're assessed on those, and that's the key part of your assessment. You also do 4 written assignments during the course, and they're the second element of assessment. So you need to pass both the teaching practice and the written assignments to pass the course, and there are 3 passing grades: Pass, Pass B and Pass A being the highest, of course. It is possible to fail a CELTA course, of course. Not that many people do. Most people, if they put the effort in and continue to the end of the course, are likely to pass the course, but there are people who fail. And you can, of course, retake the course. So CELTA is the gold standard teaching qualification. It can kickstart your career if you're a new teacher, you're wanting to get into teaching English. If you want to develop your skills, particularly in communicative language teaching, perhaps you've done some training, but it was more theoretical. It didn't look at the practical teaching skills. If you want to change your career, so you're doing something else and you want to move into teaching English, or if you're already a teacher, but you need a qualification which has recognition that will help you get jobs in other places. CELTA can then be your passport to global teaching opportunities. So we're talking mainly about CELTA today, but just to mention, we also have CELT-P and CELT-S courses, which are popular in a number of countries around the Americas. And here there's a quote from a teacher on the Panama Bilingue project who completed a CELT-S course, I think it was, saying how he was able to apply all of his learning in his regular classes. So these are courses for in-service teachers. They're usually provided by the teacher's school or their education authority, and they help people to develop those skills, very similar skills to CELTA, but at a slightly different way of delivering them, and for people at a lower language level generally. So you don't need to have a very high proficiency in English. For CELT-P and CELT-S, you need a B1 minimum language level. And these courses combine, again, online self-study. So there's around 90 hours of online study, which is provided by Cambridge English, face-to-face training sessions, which are delivered locally, and assessment through teaching practice, again. So the trainer comes and watches you teaching with your own students in your own school, written assignments, and a TKT module. And the combination of those 3 elements leads to the qualification. So they're practical, similar to CELTA in that they're very practical, focusing on developing those teaching skills. They can be delivered to larger groups. So in Panama, for example, we have groups of 300, 400 teachers a year going through these programs, all of them teachers working in state schools with the Ministry of Education. They're accessible in that they're for teachers with a B1 level. You don't have to have that high C level of English. And they're flexible in that they're blended learning, and the schools can work out a schedule that suits their needs. So there you see a bit more detail about them. It's around 120 hours, similar to CELTA in the length, but these are nearly always done over an academic year, so over 8 to 9 months part-time, because they're for teachers who are working full-time already. And currently, again, because of the COVID-19 situation, there are 100% online courses. So normally the face-to-face training is one element of the course. That can be done remotely at the moment. And the observation of teaching practice, the final observation of a lesson, the assessed teaching practice, is normally done face-to-face by a trainer. But currently you're able to do that online as well. So that's another opportunity. Okay, so that's all I'd like to say at the moment about CELTA particularly, but I hope you find some useful things from the webinar, and I'll hand you back to Alberto and join again later for questions and answers.
Tim, thank you very much for your presentation. And thank you for sharing all this precious information about the CELTA course and also about the CELT-P and CELT-S courses. So, Piri.
Thank you, Alberto. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. And I think that some people might be from somewhere where it's already evening. So good evening. So basically, it was very interesting to hear Tim telling us about CELTA. So he told us about, how candidates are assessed, what CELTA covers, also, all the different skills, teaching skills that we would develop. But I would like to bring to the table something different. Actually, what I would like to do is to reflect a little bit about what's the importance of 100% CELTA online in these very strange times that we are living in. I guess we all agree that we are facing something totally new for everybody. Teachers, parents, the market, the English teaching world. So it's new for everybody. And there are lots of questions that are coming up. So, for example, is COVID changing our relationships? How will the world be different after the pandemic? What kind of professional will be needed in the near future? And how to cope, with the pandemic stress, the pressures, the fact that we are working from home. And I think that everybody in this world nowadays is really coping and thinking about these questions. But something that I find very, very important here is that we have to be honest that not only, let's say, negative things can come out of it. Of course, it all depends a lot on us. So the whole COVID scenario is very, very disruptive. It's painful, yeah? So, for example, I guess we all had to stop doing things. I had to stop traveling, which is something that honestly I love to do, as I can be really close to the markets, yeah? And I had to stop eating out, and I had to stop so many things. I'm sure that if I asked you, if we had a poll now, you would come up with, I don't know how many things that you had to stop doing. Yeah, but as I said, it's not only about negative things. There are also opportunities. There are new things that we started doing and that we can and we should actually start doing. And I mean it from a professional level, but also on a personal level. On a professional level, let me just share with you a great experience during COVID. As an organization, we had to challenge ourselves and respond quickly to this scenario. And 100% online CELTA is one of the answers we came, up with to face this new reality. So I think this is, again, a unique opportunity. It was a unique opportunity for us, but it's also a unique opportunity for you. On a personal level, to be honest, I became much more aware of unemployment, of the people, in my community who actually lost their jobs, yeah? So again, I think that if we look at the scenario, we can find opportunities. And CELTA 100% online, it is a unique opportunity, yeah? And still I feel that we should all of us, I know it's difficult, but we should do this exercise. And to be honest, to prepare this very short presentation, I had to do this exercise of, okay, what is that is negative, but what is that is positive, and what is the outcome that I would like to see in my personal and professional life? And I realized that something which is clear for me, very challenging, not easy, is to build something that when I look back, I can be proud of. So something that when the whole, COVID is over, and of course we're going to be in a different world, it's not going to be the same world, but something that I can look at and I can say, okay, I did something. I was not only expecting people come up with solutions, but I actually did something here. Yeah. As Tim mentioned, I think that the CELTA and CELTA Online has a lot to do with self-confidence. I think that we don't know exactly when we go back to face-to-face scenarios. We don't know what exactly, teaching and learning, what the impact of COVID in the learning and teaching scenario will be. So the simple fact that we stop, we take a course, that we analyze, that we belong to a community, because let's be honest, people who've got CELTA, it's a community and people keep in touch, and there are lots of conversations and discussions that go around, within these groups of the small communities. Yeah. So I think that taking an online course, a CELTA online course now, is going to help self-confidence. Self-confidence, as Tim has also mentioned in the beginning, not only because of teaching skills, definitely because of that, but for other things too, yeah, that I would like to explore a little bit. So also, I think another very important reason is employability. I don't want to sound here negative. I don't want to sound, like the world is threatening us. If you don't have a CELTA, you're not going to get a job. But the fact is, we have to be responsible for our own employability. Yeah, this is a fact. And also, as Alberto mentioned too, and Tim several times, and I will mention it again in the next slides, is recognition that we actually get, when you have a CELTA. Having a CELTA shows that you have a certain language level, shows that you have invested, that you're a professional who is looking for development, and it also shows that you did develop, teaching skills. But again, it's not only about teaching skills. I think there are so many other things that are not maybe so clear, explicit, but that you will be working on and developing while you are taking 100% online CELTA course. So for example, challenging yourself. The simple fact that we take the course, it is challenging our status quo. Like, okay, I'm not going to wait for the end of the pandemic, but I'm going to do something about it. And also challenging because you have to teach in an online environment. And so the teaching practice is online and the assessment is going to be done online. So it involves challenges. So it is. And I think that it's overcoming that. As already we have already mentioned, building confidence. Yeah. And also, I think that developing relevant job skills that are not, let's say, I would call them, and we all call them like soft skills, problem solving. Yeah, because of course we're taking a course. There will be different moments where you have to stop and solve different problems related to teaching and learning. Initiative, planning and organizing. So people who actually took CELTA know how important, planning and organizing and anticipating problems, you work a lot on this. So that's also something extra that you will be developing. Yeah, self-management, and mainly self-management in an online environment. I think this is a super extra big plus that, we can get out of it. Yeah, and technology. So again, the online environment, working with an online environment. And when you take CELTA online, you become, to a certain extent, a student. So you will also feel how your students feel. So it's like a big loop input. Yeah, you are a teacher, but you're also a learner. You are in an online environment as a student, but you will also be teaching in an online environment. So I think that this is, these are some of the reasons why I would say that taking 100%, online CELTA course now is a unique opportunity. Of course, you will be improving your CV and job application. And of course, also as a result of that, you will feel better, a sense of progression, a sense of achievement. So as I said, I don't want to overemphasize. We know, let's say, the teaching skills that you will be developing. But I really want to emphasize what is also there underlying the course, which is also we have to take into consideration. So then you can say, but Piri, there are so many online courses I can take, right? Why CELTA? I think CELTA, as we have already mentioned several times, it's, recognized everywhere. So look at this number here, 2,100. Yeah, what do you think this number refers to? Well, just for you to know, this number refers to the organizations that actually recognize CELTA in our region. It's not the whole world, it's our region, Americas. So we have 2,100 organizations that recognize CELTA. Let's see who they are. Of course, private language schools, universities, schools, ministries of education, and even the army. So, if you want to teach in one of the countries, if you want to teach English in the army, because they also have courses there, well, if you have a CELTA, it's recognized. Yeah, it's a very good door opener, definitely. Yeah. So here, I just want to finish. So my part was really a short presentation. And I just want to invite you all to reflect and think about this unique opportunity that you don't have to travel. You can take it from your home, but at the same time, you will be doing something really big. And I know we talk about employability, we talk about self-confidence, but I think that the most important for me is that you will be more optimistic about your future. Thank you.
Piri, thank you very, very much for this very enlightening presentation. Many thanks for highlighting the skills involved in employability. I think this was one of the highlights out of many in your presentation. And also thank you for shedding a light on the future after the COVID crisis. Well, drawing on from what Piri has just mentioned, running CELTA courses fully online has been a challenge, and it has also been a learning opportunity for both CELTA tutors and CELTA candidates. In this part of the webinar, we will hear testimonials from CELTA tutors across the Americas, and we will also hear testimonials from 2 candidates who have recently completed their CELTA courses fully online. So, please welcome Henrique Moura, CELTA tutor from Brazil. Henrique, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me here talking about our experience running CELTA 100% online. Well, basically today, what I would like to share with you is a bit of the challenges we had, the adjustments we had to make, a few lessons we learned in the process. I would also like to talk to you about the skills that we have observed teachers develop taking the CELTA 100% online, and also about the advantages of the fully online course, especially the advantages that our candidates have perceived and have shared with us. So basically, at the beginning, one of the biggest challenges we had was to migrate from face-to-face courses to online courses, because when the pandemic hit us, we were in the middle of many face-to-face courses, and we had to make a decision, which wasn't very easy, which was to convert all courses into online. And then when this happened, we had to learn lots of things that we didn't know how to do. So our candidates and the volunteer students had little familiarity with teleconferencing platforms. And to be honest, we tutors had very little familiarity with those too, because we weren't used to using those platforms to teach, especially to train teachers. Also, something that happened is that as everything went online, candidates, volunteer students, course tutors had limited access to devices. So not everyone had a spare computer to use or a spare cell phone to take English lessons. And this is something we had to think about too. We had candidates and volunteer students who showed resistance to continuing their course online, and we had to think about how to help them continue with their course. Also, we had tutors who showed resistance to going online because we didn't know how to assess students online. We didn't know how to apply all the assessment criteria at the beginning. Everybody was out of their comfort zone. I was out of my comfort zone. The candidates were out of their comfort zone. The volunteer students were out of their comfort zone. And there was a lot of uncertainty at that time. Then the adjustments we made because of that were, first of all, moving all courses online. There was no way we could continue face-to-face. And then we decided to move all courses online, and we had to contact all candidates offering possibilities. So the possibilities we had at the beginning were a full refund, a deferral, which means continuing the course face-to-face when possible in the future, or go online. I think 95% of our candidates decided to go online and take the plunge. Some wanted to defer to the next face-to-face course, and no one actually, or maybe one or two candidates withdrew from the course. Then when we went online, we had to make changes to the course timetable because we used a blend of live input sessions via Zoom, and we also decided to have some asynchronous sessions on the platform. We had to have a meeting for the tutors to think about the assessment criteria and how to apply them, how to interpret them in light of online teaching. So there was a whole process of re-standardization. And then we had the first course, and based on the insights we gained during this first course, we made many other adjustments to the upcoming courses. And then we ended up having new course formats. We ended up having part-time 100% online courses with teaching practice twice a week, which we didn't have before because all our courses were either extensive over 4 months or intensive over 4 weeks. So this is also one of the adjustments we made. And then we learned a few lessons after running a few online courses. And the first lesson is that everybody adapted very quickly. the candidates, the volunteer students, the tutors. So yeah, it was possible to go online, and we actually really enjoyed it. We realized that face-to-face teaching skills are transferable to the virtual classroom. So basically, all of the techniques we used with face-to-face students were possible to be used in the online environment, with a few adaptations, of course, but the skills are transferable. We realized that the curve of development of our candidates is very similar, both online and face-to-face. So some of the most recurrent difficulties that candidates had in face-to-face courses appeared in online courses. So we didn't really see much of a difference between face-to-face and online in terms of development of candidates. We realized that absolutely all the assessment criteria could be used in the online context. We felt that the group cohesiveness was not affected, because normally on a face-to-face course, candidates are always together and they really forge a bond, they become friends for life. And this didn't change in online. People were really helping each other, and they created WhatsApp groups and they continued helping each other. So it was quite interesting to observe that too. And something that was very interesting is that after a few lessons, we realized that candidates were less stressed, because they didn't have to spend time commuting to the center. They didn't have to print copies. They didn't have to do so many things they had to do in face-to-face CELTA, that the levels of stress ended up being reduced, which was quite nice. And then just more specifically thinking about the curve of development of our candidates, we realized that some of the skills they developed that stood out were that they really became better at being less teacher-centered and at reducing their high profile, because when we are teaching online, it becomes very easy to speak all the time. They became better at using concept checking questions and instruction checking questions, because they cannot see students, or they cannot see all students the whole time. They learn how to adapt the techniques they used to use in face-to-face teaching. They started designing more varied, appealing, and effective materials, because the materials play a very important role in online teaching. And they became quite good at dealing with unexpected problems and solutions that we all know we have when going online. A few advantages then of taking the fully online format, I would say, are that you can take the course anywhere. So it doesn't matter where you're based. You can just contact the center and take the course from the comfort of your home. The skills you learn are rich and transferable, so it doesn't really make much of a difference in terms of what you learn and develop. I would say that you actually end up developing skills you wouldn't develop in the face-to-face course. You end up having more time to dedicate to the course, because you don't have to commute, you don't have to worry about printouts, and this means you're less stressed. And also that you don't have to invest extra money in commuting, meals, accommodation if you don't live near a center. So we can now cater for different candidate profiles from different places. Centers can have a wider range of assessors, because we can have people come and moderate our courses from different places and bring us different perspectives, and candidates have been extremely satisfied with the course. And just on the last note here, candidates who were reluctant at the beginning of the course ended up changing their mind after talking to their colleagues who had taken the online CELTA, and they now want to finish their course online. So I thought that was quite interesting. So that was my testimonial. Thank you.
Henrique, thank you very much for sharing all this experience. As I mentioned at the beginning, it has been a learning curve for tutors as well. And it's good for the audience to hear from, as we say, from the actual classroom that is not the classroom anymore. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
Now, please welcome the CELTA tutor, Jeff Romanco. Jeff, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much, Alberto. And Henrique, thank you for your talk, and greetings to everybody from sunny today, Vancouver, Canada. I hope everyone has been enjoying the session so far, and it's certainly been enlightening for all of us, I'm sure. I'm here to give a brief overview of the experience that we've had in terms of adapting to this online course, and give you some of the sort of the good points and some of the struggles. But I think for the most part, if I could give a brief summary, it certainly has been a positive experience for us and for the trainees to be able to learn and practice CELTA in a fully online environment. It's been remarkably a smooth transition, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that. So we moved very quickly to an online course. I think, like the situation in Sao Paulo, we were interrupted. We had to close our center very quickly in the middle of a course, and transitioned online very quickly. And then we began our next course in the fully 100% online environment. And we did this, first of all, we contacted trainers who had experience, who had experience with online and who had been teaching on, not just online CELTA and online teacher training, but teaching English online. So they've had experience in terms of using a variety of tools that are available. And we found that this certainly helped with the quick transition. Another really good point about the online CELTA is that Cambridge has been running a blended online face-to-face course for close to 10 years, and there is a fully developed Moodle or learning management platform already in place that works very well for the input part of the training. And I guess the real big adaptation was not for that point, but actually getting the teaching practice going online. So how to get students, because a really key important part of CELTA, as Tim mentioned, is that it's practical, it's training, and we have to give our candidates, or our CELTA candidates, the opportunity to train with real students. So when we did it in the face-to-face environment, we had regular groups of students who would come and take lessons and learn English from our trainees. But now on the online environment, it can be more challenging, because they're not, I guess online students maybe aren't as motivated to come, at least for the English classes. So we have to keep continually working on the recruitment process. But it's something, I guess, that we certainly learned as we go. And I think the whole idea with the online training, that it's not quite the same as face-to-face, but the classroom works very similarly. And there's actually ways we can enhance the classroom experience by going online and using special tools that are available. So from our experience, that's been something that's very good. Some of the adaptations that we made here, we extended our course. So we talked about the sort of the regular duration of a full-time course as being 4 weeks, and some centers extended to 5. We actually extended it right out to 6 weeks for the full-time course. We did this, one reason was because of the amount of screen time that's involved. So when you're online every day and it's hours and hours a day, it can get tiring. I mean, all of us have been certainly adapting to this through the pandemic and working remotely and Zoom meetings and this kind of thing. It can be tiring. So we felt that just by adding that extra couple of weeks, and also not including any teaching practice in the first week of the course, so that the actual our candidates wouldn't start their actual teaching until the second week, gave them time to do what we call front loading, where we gave sessions on how to use Zoom, how to use the different facilities that are available within the Zoom system. And then each teacher was given specifically Zoom accounts. They could practice on their own time. They could use things that are available, like breakout rooms, the whiteboards. We were using Google's Jamboard as well as a feedback tool. So lots of different things to get the trainees used to. And some of the things that we had to accept, of course, was that some people are very used to this. And this is how we grew up when we say the digital native culture. And then some of us are more, okay, we need to learn this as we go. And it certainly as with anything with CELTA, you have to learn quickly, but I think because of the practical nature that you're putting it into practice and you're going to be teaching using these actual online tools makes you motivated that you really want to do that. Another thing that we found is that a good mix of using the Moodle or the Cambridge Learning Management platforms with CELTA with live sessions helped, because the interactivity that you get with the live sessions can't be beat. It's really one of the key things for CELTA. We find that you're interacting with the other trainees on the course and learning from each other, but then using the Moodle, it sort of solidifies or makes your learning very solid. So we found that to be very good as well. So yeah, so just a few of the advantages for online CELTA. We could really look at, there's quite a few, and I think Enrique told us about this as well, but the idea that you don't need to travel to a local center has got to be one of the best, because certainly there are many CELTA centers all over the Americas. We have here in North America and in South America, Mexico, Central America, centers are everywhere, but maybe not exactly where you live. So for example, here in Vancouver, we have an island across where there's a big population called Vancouver Island. There's no center on Vancouver Island. So if they wish to take the CELTA course, they have to book accommodation, come to Vancouver, stay for 4 weeks, do the course. Now they don't need to do that. So the geography is less limiting. Another key advantage, and I think this is something when we look at the post-pandemic world, and most people are kind of agreeing that this whole online learning and online teaching is going to continue to grow. So for your future career as a teacher, having learn this skill in a very practical, very strong, very focused course will help you in the future. And other thing as well is like the online skills that you're learning, whether it's how to hold a meeting, how to manage different people in a classroom, can be transferable to other fields if you go outside of your teaching career. And it's a great, again, it can be a great opportunity for you. In terms of, yeah, we also want to look at this one, because one of the things with doing the CELTA fully online is, well, what are you missing? And this is sort of one of the, maybe you could say a disadvantage, is that you're not getting the chance to do the actual face-to-face teaching, which you would normally do on the CELTA course. So in the classroom, students seated around in a horseshoe, for example, and doing communicative practice in the classroom. And it's certainly challenging to make this, give candidates this experience in the online environment. So one of the things that we always try to do is we do a lot of linking. So when we talk about how we apply this in the classroom, we don't just talk about, okay, this is what we can do in the online classroom, but how do we make this work in the face-to-face classroom? Or for example, if you're doing breakout rooms in Zoom where you put people into pairs or small groups, how do you make that work in a classroom where you have a limited space and you have to put people into small groups? And another thing, like my video just went out, sorry, but I'm still here. Offering the candidates an opportunity for in-person or a mini practicum when that becomes available. Again, this is based on being able to come to the center, but we are letting our students know that if you want to come and do some hours of teaching, we can arrange that once the travel restrictions are lifted and the pandemic has sort of subsided. We are happy to come into our center and offer some in-person practice. It wouldn't be assessed, but it would at least give you some extra practice. And then just quickly, some of the lessons that we've learned, I think it's very similar to what Enrique said, but we certainly noted the experience of the tutors is important. One of the things about online learning is the amount of time that people spend, and because using the Moodle or the learning management system is done asynchronously, the tutors aren't with them all the time, so we need to give very specific guidelines. This is how long you should spend. Please make sure not to spend more than this time on these modules, because some trainees might end up spending way too long on certain modules. TP class organization, ensuring the candidates have decent skills, hardware, internet access. If you don't have any of those, it's hard to take an online course. And another thing that we're considering as well is running with a specialized tutor just to focus on the online course development. Okay, so that's kind of where we are here in Vancouver. And I think, like as just in summary, it's been an interesting time, but certainly one of the big positives from our sort of pandemic experience is the way that CELTA has really adapted well to this environment. So thank you everyone for listening today, and I'll hand it over to the next presenter.
Jeff, thank you very much for your presentation. Your video went away for a little while, but your
Yeah.
voice was loud and clear.
Okay.
And I particularly, it particularly drew my attention when you mentioned the fact that you had to extend the course for, adding a few more weeks because of the fact that people have been logged on, in meetings all the time. So thank you very much for this very personal and professional account, and so many lessons learned.
Thank you.
Well, please welcome Orlando Delgado, a CELTA tutor. Orlando, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me, Alberto?
Yeah, very well.
Fantastic. Testing 1 or 2. Thank you very much. So welcome, guys. So thank you. I promise not to spend too long because, your time is precious. And, it's great to see some familiar faces or to read you, actually. I think that there is a couple of people that know me, like Juan Acosta, like, welcome, mate. It's great to see you here. And welcome, everybody. And so, I think... Well, I would like to talk to you about today's basically, roughly, some of the very similar things, that Jeff and Henrique, they share with you. But also, I would like to talk about why I personally, and this might be a very personal opinion, but I've just fallen in love with CELTA Online, and I actually do think CELTA Online provides way more benefits than face-to-face CELTA. Again, we can agree to disagree, but that's just my personal opinion. And so I would like to focus on that precisely, So, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience, and what I experienced in Mexico, has been like so far. Welcome, hi Irma, hi Mirma, hi everybody. How Glauco, I recognize you. There we go. So this is basically what our experience has been like, in Mexico. Like you all know, this pandemic, hit everybody so hard, and nobody was really expecting this, of course, and nobody knew, what was going to happen. Like some of us, thought that. We were going to be in lockdown for maybe 2 days, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and so far in some countries we've been in lockdown for 4 months and counting. In some countries, in some world economies, we have no idea when we will be going back to the face-to-face classrooms, if we were to, right? But I think more importantly, rather than focusing on whether we are actually going back or we are not going back to the face-to-face classrooms, it's more about thinking how these, like Piri was saying in her presentation, how this pandemic has brought forward different changes, and maybe changes that were already happening, like online education, like blended learning, for example. But it's basically how this pandemic has press, the fast forward button in a reality that was already taking place, right? So what happened? This, and I would like to tell this like a series of a mini story. I love stories. I think people love stories, and our story started with the pandemic, right? So what happened was we had to think of a way to make sure that we could provide the training that people around the world need, the training and development that people around the world, were still interested in, because regardless of this pandemic, people still need to develop, people still want to improve their teaching skills, and simply they want to become the best version they can be, right, of themselves. So the story started with trying to provide, like a mix between synchronous and asynchronous experience, right? So basically how we could match being on online, taking a course, and then also, taking advantage of this new reality, this kind of like mixed reality, right? I don't know what you think, guys, but I've had so many meetings in the past couple of months, and I again, personal experience, but I'm not quite, I don't quite really enjoy being in front of Zoom, like on Zoom for anything more than 4 hours a day. I just absolutely think that's so anti-pedagogical. So we have to think about a way to not do that, right? in a way in which we could still provide, very high quality, training and service to our candidates, from around the world, but also in a very flexible way. So we kind of like thought of that. We achieved that, just like Jeff was saying. We went from the 4-week course, to 2 options, to the 6-week. To the 6-week option, slightly more kind of like semi-intensive. But also we went beyond that, through a flexible course that could be provided and delivered over 3 months, just like 12 weeks. And something that will actually allow people not to be chained to the screen, because again, it's just not ideal. Just like Eda is saying, yes, flexibility. I think that's what we were looking for, Eda. We were looking for that, and in that way, like Barbara is saying, CELTA is now much more possible. So we achieved that. Our aim in trying to transfer that was flexibility, pace, and training, something that is more flexible to take, and therefore something that could even be more personalized and provide, really good support and expertise to candidates around the world. So that was basically our story. And what we managed to achieve, through this storytelling was basically a course that is much more flexible, and a course where candidates, can be fully qualified, taking CELTA online, just basically connecting once a week for 3.5 hours. So I think that's just amazing. I think it goes a long way to show what the benefits of taking online courses of online education is in the future. I'm not going to dwell, I'm not going to go over all of those benefits that Henrique and Jeff mentioned, because I truly agree with them. I think flexibility in relation to, benefits in relation to accommodation, yes. Costs, yes, absolutely. Forget about visas, because people in the past had to get a visa, to travel to a center and then take the course and stay there for like 4 weeks, 3 months, whatever you name it. But I think the most important benefit that now CELTA Online provides is, in one single word, I think that would be flexibility. And we are reaching out to so many people around the world that in the past couldn't take CELTA simply because CELTA wasn't as flexible as now online education has allowed for. So I think that's the main benefit. And I don't know about you, but I think taking an international qualification from the comfort of your home, in your pajamas, logging in just 4 hours a week, it just amazes me. And with the same training, and even more so, I think, can't remember who said it, Jeff or Henrique, but they were talking about the challenge of transferring the face-to-face experience to the online experience and making sure that the quality is the same. I actually think the quality of an online course, of a CELTA Online, is higher than a face-to-face course, simply because now you're being prepared with all of these different tools: Google Classroom, Edmodo, Zoom Teaching, Google Forms, like Kahoot, all of those different tools that otherwise you wouldn't be able to get formal training in as part of a CELTA Online program through international qualification. And what's the future, guys? Just before I wrap up my my presentation, I want to talk to you about numbers, because I think, apart from the great academic people that we all are here, and that's why there are 1,287 people connecting right now, I think apart from the academic development and desire that we all want to, that we all pursue in connecting to great webinars like this one that Cambridge is offering now, is where is our future going? And just to give you some numbers, I don't know if you can see the presentation, the graphs, but the first one shows the increase in Google searches for online education from COVID-19 to now. And the second graph shows the number in billions of potential market for online education going forward. And I think this is an incredibly important issue to bear in mind, because again, coming back to my point, being qualified with CELTA online, like just writing in your CV, I took CELTA online, and now I'm actually a CELTA online qualified teacher, would potentially make you a much more competitive candidate, a much more competitive teacher in the future market of education, where in the next coming years, online education is going to be the future, and people that were trained up in online environments will actually be the first ones to get the best jobs in the world. So off you go. That's basically my 2 cents. I don't know if that's enough, Alberto. Did I take too long, or was that enough?
Just right. Thank you very much, Orlando, and thank you for sharing those numbers, especially about Google search related to online education. I think the world has had to change very, very rapidly after the pandemic, and it's makes us wonder when we see the numbers like that. Very concrete information. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, Alberto.
Thank you. So, thank you once again, Orlando. One more CELTA tutor, Wilson Portillo, who's based in Brazil, has also shared his impressions with us. Here's what Wilson says. We want to give CELTA candidates time to put theory into practice in a fully online experience. Besides an orientation component to allow candidates to experiment with the features of the platform, our part-time program includes live input sessions and additional guidance slots to reinforce contact with our tutors and allow for peer-to-peer collaboration in planning lessons and preparing course assignments. Candidates get to observe live lessons with our qualified teachers and see recorded lessons in the physical classroom, aiming at developing skills working both formats. Teaching practice slots are staggered so candidates only teach every other week. This means giving trainees more time to revise input, recap feedback, plan lessons, consult with the tutors, and experiment in unassessed slots. Overall, trainees can get acquainted with the virtual classroom and build confidence throughout the course. So we can see here 4 different experiences with many points in common in terms of adapting the CELTA to a fully online CELTA course. Once again, thank you very much to all the tutors. Now, I would like to share some testimonials from 2 CELTA candidates, Laken Hurd, who took her course in the USA, and Thais Braga, who took her CELTA course in Brazil. So let's listen to what they say from the perspective of the CELTA candidate.
Hello there, my name is Thais. I'm from Jundiaí, a city in São Paulo, Brazil, and I'm here to share with you a little bit about my experience in doing the CELTA online course at Faculdade de Cultura Inglesa in São Paulo. And I think there are 3 main aspects that I'd like to highlight that have really made this course an enriching experience for me. And the first aspect is the materials that we get access to. So we get a chance to really study and deepen our knowledge in the English language and in English language teaching. So there are many aspects that we get to study that we receive as input. And regardless of whether you have 0 or non-experience teaching or some experience teaching, I believe that it has really helped me in the sense of creating and raising awareness of my role, not only as a teacher, but also as a researcher, in that sense of always trying and being up to date and keep on studying and reading. And if all of that sounds a little bit too theoretical for you or abstract, then we also get to observe experienced teachers. And that's when we really get to see the materials and aspects we studied being put into practice in a real classroom environment. The second aspect that I'd also highlight are the live sessions with the tutors, because you might think, okay, so this is an online course, we might feel lonely at times, but really we don't, because our tutors are always there for us. They're extremely supportive, they're really helpful, And I've never felt alone throughout the course. And actually, on the contrary, they've made us feel in a way that our group of CELTs were really like this sort of a small community of teachers, which is also another characteristic very important for a teacher to have, I believe, that sense of being a part of an active sharing community. And that leads me to my final, but not less important aspect of the course, which are the teaching practices online. However challenging they may be, because they really are a challenge, this is the one moment in which we finally get to put everything we saw, everything we studied so far, everything we observed into our own teaching practices. I think this is a crucial moment, or it has been a crucial moment for me as a teacher, because I've taken ownership of everything I saw before and every experience I've had throughout the course, and the live sessions with the tutors, and actually applying it into my own lesson plans, writing it and according to everything I saw. And after each teaching practice, we get our feedback from the tutor and from our colleagues. So that's basically a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us to really be reflective and critical of our own work and of our colleagues' works as well. I don't think that comes up very often in the life of a teacher, so it has been really an amazing journey for me, and it has helped me grow professionally and personally as well. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share, and bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Lakin, and I took CELTA 100% online during the midst of the 2020 pandemic, and I gotta say, it was an incredible experience. I don't feel like doing it all online retracted from any bit of the learning that I had, that any bit of connecting with the students or watching and learning from my tutors and my peers. I don't feel like it impeded on any part of the learning experience. And I want people to know that just because you're taking online does not make it an easier option. It was still challenging in its own right, because you have to learn how to engage with students from behind a screen, and that is not easy. It's not easy to do, and I learned so much from this experience. We all watched each other and we took notes. It was really nice to do it from the comfort of my own home. Especially the first day of teaching, I broke my foot, and that is crazy. To be able to complete a teaching certification while healing your body. I was in so much pain the first day, and I remember I was like just leaning back, and I had my foot propped up so that it would help the swelling go down. And it was crazy. I can't believe it. I can't believe that I did it. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I had to go in person. So I was able to stay home and recover and still learn so much. And I really loved it. I felt like all my teachers, they were there every step of the way. They were checking in on us, making sure that we were okay, and making sure we were getting things done. Anytime I had a question, they were available and they got back to me. My peers were there every step of the way. We helped each other get through this experience, and I still felt like I was able to connect with the students. Even though it was brief, I still got to do that, and I got to learn how to do it from behind the screen. So it was a really great experience, and I definitely recommend it.
Once again, we would like to thank the CELTA tutors Henrique Moura, Jeff Romanco, Orlando Delgado, and Wilson Portillo for sharing their experiences with us today. We'd also like to thank Laken and Thais for sharing their views as CELTA candidates, taking the course fully online. Laken, we hope your foot is okay now, and we wish you well. Last but not least, we have received many questions from our participants, and will now direct the questions to our panel formed by Tim Banks, Piri Szabo, and the CELTA tutors, Henrique Moura, Jeff Romanco, and Orlando Delgado. So, we have many questions, as I said, and we're going to start with first question for, they say here, Tim, Alberto, or Piri. So I'll leave it to Tim and Piri in the first place. Is it possible to take a course in another country that is not your own?
It is, it's always possible, and usually with the face-to-face course, you'd have to go to the country to take the course. Currently, with the 100% online version, then you can choose the center that you want to work with. So it's up to you to decide which center you want to apply to. That can be anywhere in practice.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you very much. Piri, any comments on that?
No, I think this is, as we said, a unique opportunity. Yeah. Once we have face-to-face again, then it has to be probably in the country where you live in. So near, in your hometown, so you don't have to commute, etc. So again, taking online now is a unique opportunity.
Okay. Thank you, Piri. I have a question here for a CELTA tutor. So we're going to follow the alphabetical order for CELTA tutors, if that's okay with you. So we're going to start with Henrique Moura then. Henrique, could we be assessed if we are not teaching right now?
Yes, because when you take a CELTA course, the center puts together a group of volunteer students. So you will be teaching a group of students that the center will prepare for you to teach. And also CELTA is a pre-service course. So any teacher who has never taught can take the course and teach students. So it doesn't really make a difference if you don't have your own groups right now. It is possible, yes.
Okay. I have another question for another CELTA tutor. So I'm going to ask Jeff to answer this question. Jeff, are these classes being assessed online? Can you clarify?
Sure. Sorry, my video seemed to have shut off again. I hope you can hear me.
We can.
Okay. Yeah. So the 100% CELTA online course is being fully assessed online. So the actual assessment procedure hasn't changed from what we had with the traditional face-to-face course. So you'll be assessed with continuous assessment by a minimum of 2 trainers throughout the course. And there'll also be an external assessor who will come on the course as well and ensure that all the standardization is correct. So the actual assessment hasn't changed at all.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Jeff. We have here another question for a CELTA tutor, and I'm going to ask Orlando to answer this question. I'm sure you have already addressed this point in your presentations, but the question is, has the CELTA course online got a specific schedule?
Well, again, like Tim was saying, and everybody said, it really depends on the center where you take the course. Like there are some more. Again, like the keyword I would like to emphasize is flexibility. There are some course options more flexible than others, right? I know of like different centers that give like different schedules. I mean, just to give you a few, there are centers that would do, say, a 6-week option where you connect to Zoom 6 hours every day, Monday to Friday. There are also some centers where you connect to Zoom only once a week for 4 hours. That's what we've been doing in Mexico to allow for a greater flexible option. There are some centers that will do 6 weeks. There are some centers that will do 12 weeks. So I think the answer would be it depends. and that's why there is such a range of options, and there is such a range of flexible course options now that everything is online. So it's like when you go to a restaurant, that is well catered, basically there's any kind of a course option for everybody, to every single taste.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Orlando. Tim, there is a recurrent question here. What's the difference between CELTA and TKT?
Yes, I've seen a few questions about the difference between CELTA, TKT, and Delta as well. TKT is an assessment. It's not a training course in itself. It's purely an assessment. So in many ways, it's more like one of our language exams. You can prepare by taking a course. You can prepare by self-study. It's entirely up to you. And then you register with one of our authorized exam centers and take the TKT as the test. You get the certificate, and that proves your level of knowledge of teaching. CELTA is very different in that it's not an assessment on its own, it's an assessed course. So the course is about developing your skills, and the course really is the qualification. So you have to take the course to gain the qualification. And the language requirement is different. For TKT, we recommend B1 minimum language level. For CELTA, you must have at least a high C1 or C2 level. Delta, people are asking as well how that relates to CELTA, and Delta is usually for people with more experience. So somebody who takes CELTA, for example, at the beginning of their career may go on several years later to take the Delta. It's a higher level. It's like a master's level qualification.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Tim. Piri, we have a question for you. It's a bit of a challenging one. This is why we are sending you the question, right? Can we take other exams 100% online nowadays? I mean, from home, for example, C1 Advanced, TKT, etc.
No. I mean, we have LinguaSkill, which you can take from home, but remember that is for a specific profile, right? It's for adults. For qualifications, not at the moment. But again, as I said, COVID is an opportunity for us. And as an organization, we are looking into solutions for TKT also, and also for qualifications, so advanced and all of those. Again, we don't have a definite answer, but I can tell you that we are looking into solutions. Alberto.
Thank you very much, Piri. I have here a question for CELTA tutors, and I mean, I'm going to make yourselves at home, and then you can decide who would like to answer this question, right? The question is, I understand that this course is 100% online, but how about the certificate you get when the course finishes? Are you going to send it through email? Does it have a signature? Would one of the CELTA tutors answer this question, please?
Can I answer? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
And then
I was just waiting for people to see if anybody else would like to answer.
Okay.
No, the certificate has absolutely no different kind of like seal or anything on stamp on it, because again, we believe the course, whether you take it face-to-face or, CELTA online, it just basically represents the same, if not a higher quality. Again, that's kind of like my own personal, I do need to emphasize that's my own personal view. I do think online training is higher than face-to-face in quality. However, regardless of whether you take it face-to-face or online, you get exactly the same certificate. The certificate is sent to you from the center where you took the course. And and that's part of the process. The certificate will arrive anything between like 8 and 12 weeks after you finish the course.
Thank you, Orlando. In that case, we are going to make it reverse alphabetical order. So I'm going to ask Jeff to answer this question, right, Jeff? How many hours of study a week are necessary? How many hours of online meetings will be necessary? Okay. This is a question from one of the participants.
Okay, sure. I think going back to the presentation, it was mentioned that a CELTA course generally consists of about 120 hours of kind of what we could say moderated time with the instructor plus 80 hours of independence. So think of a course as a whole as approximately 200 hours. So then you can divide that up into how many weeks you're doing the course. So when you're doing a traditional face-to-face course, you're looking at, at least a minimum of 50-hour-a-week commitment. But if you divide that up into, for example, 6 weeks, then you're lowering it down to 30-something hours per week, or depending again on the length of the course. But it is a big time commitment for any CELTA course, but you think maybe as an average, a whole package is at least 200.
Will there be any difference regards the certificate between face-to-face CELTA and an online one? Tim, would you like to answer that?
Yes, sure. So no, the certificate is exactly the same. It's a CELTA certificate, so it doesn't matter how you take it, whether you take it full-time, part-time, face-to-face, online, you get a CELTA certificate at the end of the course. So yeah, there's no difference. Could I address one other question that's coming up a lot in the comments while I'm talking, Alberto? There's a lot of people asking about prices and dates and things like that. First of all, if you want to find information about dates of courses and prices, you can find that by approaching the authorized CELTA centers. So we don't set the dates, they're set by the centers. So you can contact your local center or any center you want to approach to find out more about when they're running courses, what the price is. But also comments saying it's expensive. CELTA is expensive. Yes, it's true. It's not a cheap course. And if you think about the costs of running a CELTA course, that's why it's expensive. Every CELTA course has one tutor for every 6 candidates on the course. If you think, that's 120 hours of contact time, one tutor with every 6 candidates, so usually 2 tutors, sometimes 3 tutors on each course. It's very expensive to run face-to-face courses. There's all the costs of premises and things, but even for an online-only course, the centres still have those costs of premises, even if they're not using them for that particular course. So yes, it is expensive. Doesn't mean the CELTA centres are making a massive profit. It's just because it's an expensive course to run.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, can I, Alberto, say a word about it
Please
too?
do.
Yeah.
Please do.
So yes, I saw in the chat lots of people talking about how much it costs, expensive, and I think that again, as Tim mentioned, if we look at everything we mentioned in terms of recognition and the value of the certificate around the world, we have to consider that. And the second, in terms of prices, we also have to consider that we have CELTA in different countries with different taxes. So it's very difficult to try to get any comparison, and discussion on pricing. So I think what we have to take home in terms of pricing is that, yes, it's probably people have to make an effort to pay, but it's an investment. And then you have to check the local prices with your local CELTA centers in your region. Yeah. So we can't really address the pricing issue because, as I mentioned, it's going to vary across the region significantly depending on the country. And as I just want to make sure that, as Tim mentioned, that it's a very, very valued certificate all over the world. So wherever you go and you go into an English teaching community and you have a CELTA certificate, everybody knows about your skills, your ability to teach, and probably you're going to find a job.
Okay. Piri, can I take the opportunity to ask you to extend your answer a little bit, because there is another recurrent question. Can I take the CELTA in this country, in that country? What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, this was the answer that Tim gave already. I think it was one of the first questions, that with CELTA on 100% online, yeah, you can take in this country or in that country. But I have to be honest that most probably, going back to price, the pricing will make more sense in the country where you are in, rather than, moving to another country.
Yeah, sorry, the question was a bit different. Maybe I wasn't very clear. The question is, they are not sure whether in their country there is a CELTA center they could go to.
Ah, okay. Yes. No, if there isn't a CELTA center, online CELTA center in your country, yes, you can do it. And again, take the opportunity that it's 100% online and that you can do it. in another country. So if you are in a country or if you are in a city where there isn't a CELTA, you can now take the opportunity of the online, 100% online CELTA, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then just to make sure, Alberto, we are going to send everybody, later, not today, but later in the week, we are going to send the list of online centers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Piri. Well, everyone, unfortunately, our time is up, and we hope we have managed to answer some key questions. And before we say goodbye, I'd like to thank our speakers, Tim Banks and Piri Szabo. I would also like to thank our CELTA tutors, Henrique Moura, Jeff Romanco, Orlando Delgado, and Wilson Portillo, as well as our CELTA candidates, Laken and Thais. I have also a big thank you to our marketing team and our events team in the UK, without whom none of this would have been possible. So thank you very much, team. Just to remind you again, the certificate, as well as the slides, and a link to the recording, a digital badge, and a list of CELTA centers, which Piri has just mentioned in the Americas, will be sent to you shortly. The list includes all the centers that are ready to offer the fully online CELTA course, and it's valid for now, as other centers might become eligible to offer the online CELTA, so the list will need updating in the future. Finally, a big thank you to all of you for your active participation in the chat, for your active participation in the polls, and for sending your questions, okay? Everyone, take care and stay safe, and thank you very much once again. Good evening, good afternoon, or even good morning, wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.